So, good morning, everyone. We'll begin with the reflections on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings release from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. Continue to follow Reverend Heng Sure and Marty on their pilgrimage. Today's entries by Dharma Master Heng Sure, March 26, 1978, titled Getting Past the Prickly Spines. Cactus practice. Prickly pear. Across the fence in the low pasture, the first we've seen, then another 100 yards on. A cactus with an unfriendly appearance, but a personality like a bodhisattva, benefiting people in 100 ways. A drugstore in the desert. Cultivation works the same way. From the outside, it looks like suffering. Those who walk the bodhisattva way taste its sweet rewards. Getting past the prickly spines is the trick. Singe the fruits in the fire. The needles turn to smoke and disappear. The tough purple skin softens up and opens, revealing flavorful goodness. Indians and early pioneers ate cactus fruit raw or boiled, stewed or dried. The seeds made flour, and the juice makes a sweet syrup. Mexicans eat cactus pickles, use the fleshly cactus pads as a poultice to bind wounds and bruises, and add cactus sap to mortar and whitewash so it sticks better to adobe walls. Bodhisattvas pass through the fires of self-discipline and lose the spines of false thoughts, bad habits, and attachments. Cultivation opens and softens stubborn minds to reveal the infinite potential for wisdom within. Enlightened beings benefit all creatures impartially, with no thoughts for fame or personal gain, just like the cactus. Bodhisattvas are like the oasis in the desert of birth and death, manifesting countless skillful means to end suffering and give joy. But walking the way looks as thorny as a prickly pear. An artful evangelist from another religion argued this morning, "You're ruining your body. Don't your hands and knees want to quit? Why torture yourself like this? Surely your Buddha or whomever you worship doesn't want you to suffer. You shouldn't punish yourself any longer. It's too hard. Too much bitterness." I remember what an old Chan master said. People in the world chase the objects of desire and make stake suffering for bliss. Cultivators want to endure suffering and attain genuine, lasting bliss. So they cheat themselves a little bit, take a loss in the world, cultivate bitter practices, and in every thought, word, and deed, work to benefit the whole world with no thought for themselves. When you're enlightened, everything before seems just like a dream. Now we're all dreaming, but don't know it. As the persuasive missionary talked away, I looked at the cactus in the pasture and heard the monk's words. We cultivate cactus practice. Once past the spines, there's nourishment and goodness for all. Avatamsaka Sutra, Chapter 40. I will follow and learn from Vairochana as he cultivated all kinds of bitter ascetic practices. I remember Heng Sure sharing with Jin Shi and myself a number of times how on their pilgrimage they often had to face evangelists who would try to come and convert them to kind of save their soul. And so reading this entry where Heng Sure is being converted by probably a Christian, telling them, why are you suffering so much? Why don't you just accept Jesus as your Lord and everything will be okay. You don't have to suffer. And so this reminded me because actually recently there was a phone call at the monastery. The person left a message asking, can somebody please call him back? And so I heard the message and I called the person back the next day and said, hello, hello. I said, this is the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. I just want to return your call. Is something I can help you with? And he said, I was wondering, are you open? What's your schedule like? So I mentioned that we're not open yet because of the COVID, but people can join us online. I said, okay. And then the tone of his voice changed and he asked, do you know why these times are so chaotic? I said, excuse me? He said, do you know why we have so much chaos now? I said, what do you mean? And then he said, have you read the Bible? I said, oh, okay, now I know where this is going. I said, yeah, actually they have. And so he started saying, this is the end time. The judgment day is coming. There's chaos everywhere. It's kind of like Armageddon voice coming over the phone. And I could feel this kind of inside something tighten up and wanted to defend myself. I don't know if my responses were so skillful, but I try not to react too much. But I said something like, yeah, sounds like you really believe what you're saying. And Jesus really cares about living beings, wants us not to suffer and find happiness. And then you start talking about, how there's these demonic paths and all these kind of things. And I had to say, I'm sorry, but I have the other things I have to do at the monastery. Wish you well, and I have to go. And I hung up the phone. And after the phone call, I could feel in my body still the energy of that kind of fierce, kind of aggressive, converting, wanting to get me to agree with him to make me afraid and doubt what I'm doing. And I could feel, okay, this is one way of coming at religion that I think we sometimes in America can find not too hard. Right? We just go on YouTube and look for some of these evangelical preaching where it's kind of fire and brimstone, and you immediately find it. Or sometimes people might knock on the door or call us on the phone. But honestly, this was one of the reasons I found the Dharma so appealing. Because within the Buddha tradition, we don't really have this kind of urgency to convert the world to our way of thinking. Just yesterday, we had a class on the Avatamsaka Sutra, where we talked about the 9th vow of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, where he says, constantly accord with living beings. He says, how do you practice constantly according? He says, serving all beings, just like my parents, just like the Arhats, just like the Buddhas. I serve and care for living beings in this way. I say, I want to be a doctor for the sick, a light for those in darkness, a guide for those who've lost their way. And he says that when I accord with and make offerings to living beings, it's just like I'm according and making offerings to the Buddha. And I find that this is a very inspiring teaching, where you can say as maybe Buddhists or those aspiring to walk this path to awakening, it doesn't come from forcing others to see things the way we do. But in fact, letting go of our own points of view, listening deeply to living beings, understanding their points of view, and being of true service, caring for them in their well-being. And in that process, little bit by little bit, we're all brought to awakening. And in passages it talks about that. It says how the Bodhisattva sees living beings as the inspiration for great compassion. And because of great compassion, they cultivate. And because they really cultivate, they realize Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. They realize Buddhahood. So the sutra says that, therefore, awakening belongs to living beings. Or another way you can say it, if we're looking inside, is that awakening belongs to living beings inside our own nature. All the afflictions, all the doubts, all the fears, the anxiety and anger, the irritation and greed, all those living beings. And when those living beings arise, if we can meet those living beings with great compassion, a wish to listen deeply and, you could say, heal those places, those living beings in our hearts that have maybe gone the wrong way, then little bit by little bit we bring all of us to liberation. So I think this is a very important teaching for us, because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in our own point of view, especially if we really believe this path of awakening is beneficial for ourselves and those around us. And we can get very rigid in our thinking. And what I find so inspiring about the Dharma is that the deeper we have faith in the Dharma, the more we're able to relax, the more patient and gentle we become, and the more we're able to truly be of service. Okay, so now let's do 3 steps, 1 bow. It's a very good way to practice relaxation of the body and meet our inner states with a kind of gentle, caring heart. And as with each bow, we find ourselves maybe a little bit closer to our nature.